So,
Hi,
Hello.
thanks for joining us. Um, I'm Jono Brown, and this is Kenton over here. Kenton Luck, fabulous product manager. Um, and I'm going to tell you as briefly as possible about what it is we do and how we do it. Start out telling you how did I get started uh, working with Discovery. As you guys may know, we mostly do our business with Warner Brothers Discovery, um, putting music in many of their shows. Uh, uh, about, well, I was a founding composer of a company called X-Ray Dog Music, and we did mostly trailer music. That was back in the late 90s. Um, in about 2007, I got an opportunity to work on a Super Bowl TV ad, and which we got. It was great, and I became good friends with the woman that was the executive producer on that ad. She went on to become the head of Discovery Music, and I had asked her, "Can I write for Discovery?" And she said, "Well, the catalog's pretty full, blah blah blah." She said, "But there is this one thing that we need." So I said, "Great, I'll do what you need." At that point, it was some kind of uh, Killers alt rock stuff. And so we just got in the practice of whatever she needed that she didn't have in the library, I would do it. Until it got to the point where I was getting shows of my own to write for. It got to the point where there was a lot more music needed that what I or my co-writers could write. So I started bringing on some friends and having them write, and the ball got rolling. Uh, and that's how the company got started. My friend who was running Discovery is now moved on to Warner Chappell, and I've gotten to have the same kind of relationship with the guys that are running the company now that I used to have, but it's actually better because now we're uh, able to put music in all the shows that they're working on rather than just the one show that I might have been working on. So at this point, we have more shows than the guys that we're currently working with are able to create. As you may know, uh, one episode of a show on Discovery will probably use more than 100 cues for the one episode. Um, Typical show will do 12 to 16 or 24 episodes per season. And the editors are more than happy to have new music for each episode. They'll use their favorites, but they also like to have fresh stuff. So if you think about even 12 episodes, they're going to use probably more than 1,000 cues. So there's a lot of room to put music in. Um, Also, in addition to working with Discovery, um, we have a partnership with Song Trader. We're a content partner for them. They mainly collect content ID from uh, YouTube or Facebook, all your social platforms. But they also put music in advertising, and they also put music in or they pitch music for TikTok, which is becoming rapidly a very uh, productive source of income for them and us. It's kind of a new income stream for us. It's nothing that I'm focusing on, but it's nice to have that extra bits that come in. So what the deal is with the business between us and the composers is Sick Muse will own the music that the composer creates. It's an exclusive deal. The writer retains 100% of their writer's share. For the Warner Brothers Discovery stuff, I split the publishing with them. So in a sense, it's like you're writing directly for Discovery. They don't have the staff to supervise for all the music they need. So I'm providing a good service for them. Any money that comes in, the writer will get their writer share, 50% of whatever money comes in. The vast majority of the income that we get is from performance royalties, okay, which you will collect from your PRO, ASCAP, BMI, or whatever the other non-US PROs may be. But anything that comes in, either the odd bits of sync money, sync fees like we would get from, for example, Songtrader, or the rare occasion where I'm able to put something in a TV ad, you're going to get your half of that money. And the contract says that you will get paid quarterly for that kind of money, but I try to pay it as soon as the money comes in. If it's more than $1, we're going to send it out right away. If you are a non-US composer, it would be good to have a US bank account or an account that will accept Zelle payments. That's how we pay through the corporate account. If you don't have that, we're going to have to wait till it's at least $100 before we can mail a physical check. So, did I get all the business stuff? Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the business model and how we deal with stuff. I'm sure I didn't cover everything. Does anybody have any questions about the business before I get into the some music stuff? You can raise your hand on the little raise hand button, or you can just speak.
Yeah,
I guess you. Oh, sorry.
And please introduce yourself so we know who you are and how to say your name.
Okay, I'm Adonis. Hi,
Hey, Adonis.
Hi, everybody. So I guess you'll be sending out contracts to us.
Yes. If you're interested in writing for us, which we hope you will be, I think you guys are all talented. Please send an email to info@sickmuse.tv, your mailing address, your, of course, email address, your phone number, your PRO affiliation, and your IPI number. And then we'll fill in a contract and send it to you to read. If you're cool with it, sign it and return it. If you have questions, please ask. We're happy to answer whatever questions we can about the contract. If you want to have your lawyer look at it, that's great. We cannot send out any music until we have a signed agreement from you. That just, we can listen to MP3s, but don't send any final mixes until the contract is signed, because it can be a nightmare.
Also, with that other, share your name as it's registered with the PRO. That would be helpful.
Your legal name should be on there on the contract. Somebody else had a question?
Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to clarify. So it's, of course, the 50% of the royalties, but also 50% of sync fees. Is that correct?
Correct. But I should be clear. Most often we are not getting sync fees for this stuff. We have a blanket license for Warner Brothers Discovery. It's a gratis license. They get all the music for free for that. On a rare occasion, if your cue is maybe going to be used for a theme song for one of the shows, we can maybe get some money up front. Or if there's a very involved custom writing type of situation, there might be some money up front. But generally, for the Discovery stuff, there is not. The Song Trader stuff is completely different. There is some sync fees, but it's small amounts, I'll be honest. Occasionally, there's some bigger chunks that come in for that. Occasionally, they will send out a request for music for a specific purpose. Like today, actually, there was just one for it was a movie that needed some whatever ethnic type of music, and they wanted the music by 1:30 p.m. today. So it wasn't really a situation where we could be writing anything, but we could send out, whatever music that we had that was appropriate. The stuff for them sometimes can pay a lot of money. I've seen, up to $60,000 for that stuff, but those things are lottery tickets. Like there's a lot of people pitching for that stuff. So from my experience, it's not really worth to write something unless you feel like you really, are going to hit a home run for that. But if you have existing music, we would send you out like an email saying, we just got a note from Song Trader and they need this kind of music, and here's the deadline for that. Now, as far as deadlines for the Discovery stuff, there's generally a long period where you can be writing. For example, we are just getting started on the new season of Homestead Rescue, which is a really good paying show to write for. We've been working on the previous season, which has not yet been released, and we just got word that they're renewed. They will do, was it
14?
It's 14 2-hour long episodes plus 2 additional hour long retrospectives. So essentially like 32 hours of music, or of shows. That the last episode isn't due until the end of July, so almost a year from now. So I personally will be writing a lot of stuff for that show because I've had experience with it. It's in my wheelhouse and I've done well with it. So that's the kind of thing. Sometimes it's just one episode. It might be a pilot. We will send out a brief. We have a meeting with those guys about every 3 weeks, and they tell us what they need, and we'll write a not very well written, but we'll write a brief and send it to you guys with what they need. We'll try to say what network it's for, how many episodes, what season it's in. It's always better, of course, to be writing for a show that's in, anything past its first season, because that show is going to have legs. There will be reruns. Once you get into the reruns, that's when the money starts to be, it adds up, it snowballs. I've had shows where, 13 years ago, we worked on for 8 years, and those shows are still airing. There's a group of shows. There's Northwoods Law, Lone Star Law, and Louisiana Law, which Discovery shows or Animal Planet shows for a full block, a 24-hour block on Sundays. And it's just been airing like every Sunday, a full day for for years. So that's really the goal is to get on a show that's got legs like that. It helps if you're in on the ground floor, which is why I think it's worth to write stuff for the pilot. A pilot, as you know, might not get picked up. Very often they don't. But if you get music in the pilot and it gets picked up, you're going to be the first person that they're going to go to for, the rest of the season because you've established the sound of the show. So it is worthwhile to write on those pilots. They're usually looking for something that's different than all the other shows. And ultimately, they end up with stuff that sounds pretty similar to the whatever else is on the network. Each of the networks, for example, Discovery, Animal Planet, TLC, Oprah Winfrey Network, ID, on and on, they each sort of have their own sound. And so if a showrunner is asking for some music for their new show that doesn't necessarily fit with all the other shows that are on that network, you want to take it with a grain of salt. It might end up being great and perfect and a lot of fun to work on. I had done a couple of car shows for them that first one, they wanted Tex-Mex music. It's completely unlike any other car show music. But we did that. The network didn't like it, but the showrunner went to bat for it. And we ended up getting 3 seasons of just Tex-Mex music, which was great because it did not exist anywhere else. So they had to use pretty much only our stuff. Then there was another car show set in Las Vegas where they wanted spaghetti Western, which we ended up getting a lot of music in that because we put our own spin on that spaghetti Western stuff, and it ended up being the sound of the show. It's a good time to see if anybody's got any questions. Okay.
Sorry, I keep speaking up. Yeah, no. So we talked about the business aspect of it, but I was more curious about just the operations aspect of it. Is this how many composers do you typically have on a single project? Do you divide and conquer? Is it just take what you want? How do you work from that perspective?
Excellent question. We currently have probably about 20 composers that are submitting music on a regular basis. There's a bunch of other guys that kind of come and go. Either some guys are touring musicians or some guys are working on movies, and in between they'll do this reality show music. It's a great thing to work on when you have time. I personally do it full time. I try to write 3 cues a day. So yeah, when we send out a brief, you are welcome to write for whatever show you like or shows that are on the brief. You can do as much or as little music as you like to. As I mentioned, these shows use so much music that there's really not a limit. Nobody has ever said, please send us less music. They always want more. So as much as we want the music to be really high quality, we're not so much competing with each other because they do use a lot. And yeah, that's it. They use a lot. I don't know what the percentage is of the stuff that we submit that gets used, but it's been my experience that somewhere along the line, everything's going to get used. So what happens with the music is we're going to submit it to the show, as soon as we get it. We'll send in a batch probably every 2 weeks. So it goes right to the show. After we're done with each of those particular shows, we will assemble the music into appropriate albums, which will then go onto the Warner Brothers Discovery website so that other shows can use it. When they first tell us what shows we're going to be working on that month, we'll send them as many albums that we have existing that fit for that show. We've got at this point about 300 albums, I think. It's probably over 6,000 cues, I think. So we're going to send them the stuff, anything that might fit. They're going to get that right off the bat. And then we're going to send them all the new music that we create. I've found it's kind of good to get as much music into them at the beginning, because then they have it. But also it's good to be sending them music as they're editing, because they might find, as they get to episode 4 or 5 or whatever, that they're tired of the music that they have and they're happy. Oh, here's a nice fresh batch, and they'll put that right in. Did I answer all your questions? There was kind of a few.
Just about the operations.
Yeah, I think you did it. I just dropped something in the chat. It was, just so I can understand how you are working with Discovery. Are there multiple companies competing for the music for each show? Like, 50 companies are sending all of their playlists.
Right.
Or is it a short list, or is it like 1-to-1?
Right. That's excellent question. So each production company that's making a show, and there are many different production companies, have their own way of doing it. They're all Discovery shows. So it's beneficial for the company, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. It's beneficial for them to keep it in-house because the money is going back into the pockets of the company, the publishing side. So there is a preference, but yes, there are other companies that sometimes, but not always, are pitching on a given show. Sometimes it's just Discovery. Sometimes it's just me, which is, of course, my preferred way of doing things. It's great to have a show with 100% Sick Muse music in there. It's not 50 companies. There might be, APM or Extreme or some of those other big ones that are involved. I believe that my relationship with the Discovery guys is pretty unique. They're not doing meetings all the time with various other music houses. Like I said at the beginning, I had a personal relationship with the person that was running the company for a bunch of years. And then when she moved on, my relationship continued with the new people. And they're friends now. We've been working together now with those guys for about 6 years. And it's a real nice thing. And we get the requests as soon as they get them. So yeah, I think that kind of covers that. Any other questions? Chris?
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Let's have Chris.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, are there any standard lengths that compositions need to be 60 seconds, 45 seconds, or does it just vary from project to project?
Yeah, that's that gets into the whole subject of how we do things, which is great. I'll happy to talk to that. Our cues are generally at least 90 seconds, not much more than 2.5 minutes. The amount of music that gets used in these shows is typically, if you get it used for 45 seconds, that's pretty good. I've been told by some editors that they're kind of trained to switch a cue if it's been going for 45 seconds. But sometimes it gets used for 1.5 minutes, which is why we try to do that amount of music. My philosophy and my experience is that on these reality shows, the editors, they don't want to do any more work than they have to. If you give them a break, if you give them an off ramp, right, they're going to take that. So if you put in a big break at 25 seconds, that's where they're going to stop using your cue. They're going to, at that point, switch. Unless they sort of have a specific reason to have a break at that point, but we don't know. So I try not to have breaks before really like 55 seconds. If I can get the cue that long, and then I consider that a victory, right? Similarly, the cues should never take a sharp left turn. You should not change styles or grooves or emotional content in the middle of a cue unless you have a specific reason to do that. Sometimes they've asked for, oh, we want a cue that starts out melancholy but then gets uplifting. But I think that is challenging because you don't know when they're going to switch in their story. I think it's better to do a melancholy cue and then do an uplifting cue rather than trying to predict that. Now, I'll talk a little bit about endings. Cues, man, you always have to have an ending. They can't just stop. They cannot just stop. The end of the cue needs to have a little lift, even though I know I just said don't change your sort of dynamic level or whatever. The end, you need to always build into an ending. Imagine that you're going into a commercial. It gets to the thing, it's got to go build, 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 build. What I like to do is build like that and then have a break there. I like to have an unresolved sort of false ending at the end of the cue where they can go to have some suspense going into a commercial or to another scene, and then a big hit after that little break has, all the reverb and whatnot has rang out. And then you have that big, long ending, one hit that a editor can take and put it anywhere in your cue and end, right? So if you've got guitars on there, don't have a strum into it. Don't have a swoosh into that last hit. Just give them something that goes bang, and they can put that for the ending. Let that thing ring out for as long as you can. Nice reverb or delay. I'm talking like 8 or 10 seconds. Because if you just got 45 seconds of your cue used and then they take your last hit and move it over to where they want to get out and they let it ring out for 10 seconds, you just got paid like 20, 25% more money for that one hit, right? Which sometimes it seems unmusical, like, oh, well, it always is the same sort of ending. But really, the endings are different. It always should go with your cue. It should fit what you're doing. But if you're working on a show and they're used to having that last hit, they use it pretty often, and it does add up. There you go. There was another question. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Claudia.
Oh, Ken's friend Claudia. What did you want to
Hi,
ask?
Jono. How are you?
Good.
Well, thank you for all the information. I have a question about like the contract. Do you prefer exclusive writers? I write for another library as well, and I just wanted to make that clear. And also, when you we send you the cues, when we send you cues that are, for a specific show or for a specific brief, if they don't get picked up, what do you're gonna keep the cues in your library? How does it usually work for you?
Sure. First of all, you can write for whomever you want to. You can do whatever projects you want to. We don't have any sort of hooks into you for that. The music that we accept will then be exclusive. We will own that music. If there's something that we feel is just not appropriate for the library, we'll say that and say, why don't you hold on to this or whatever, and then you can do whatever you want for it. But really, our goal is to get your cues to be usable for the shows that we're pitching for. If you're writing for a show, and you do your homework, you should probably be in the ballpark, and we want to, get your cue to where it's going to get used. If for whatever reason the cue's not used in the particular show that we're writing for, it still is going to go in the Discovery library. It's going to go in our library, and somewhere along the line, it's probably going to get used. And it'll get used for a bunch of different things. I often have, writers say to me, like, "Whoa, I got a bunch of stuff in this show that I never heard of." Yeah, Discovery has networks all over the world, and they can all use the music in the Discovery library for free. So, for example, we were working on Naked and Afraid Brazil, which was just for Brazil, and they used a bunch of our existing stuff, and we wrote new music for that. So, yeah, that's what's going to happen to the music. Can we use cues that we have written for our own reels, non-commercial purposes? Yeah, you can use the music that we've taken for your own reels, put it on your socials, whatever, that's fine. Sometimes that actually generates a little bit of money with the content ID, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Also, if you happen to be able to license that cue for something, we're not against that, but we would need to take care of the business end on that. Let's say, I don't know, you've got a friend who's doing a TV commercial or whatever. Oh, they want to use my cue, blah, blah, blah. Sure, that's okay. You just need to tell us about it, and we'll take care of the business end. I can talk a little bit more about the music stuff.
Frequently asked questions. How will they know if the cue gets used?
That's it. Yes. How will you know if a cue gets used? When it shows up on your statement from your PRO, and they're putting money in your bank account, that is really how you know that the cue was used. Very rarely we'll get a production company reaching out to us to find out the writer and publisher information on a handful of cues that for whatever reason they couldn't figure out how to use the metadata. So they reach out to us and we'll tell them. And in that case, we do let the composers know, oh, hey, we heard that your cue, this one or that one, is getting used for this show. But that doesn't often happen. Since it's a blanket license, nobody's reaching out to us to clear the music. It's already pre-cleared, so they can use it. It's a bit of a drag, I will say, that you don't know for sure if your stuff is getting used for what's, a long time. If we're working on a show that's just in production, like, for example, I was talking about Homestead Rescue, this new season, that's not going to be released for another year. So we'll be writing music for this for a year, and it's going to finally get released. And then they have like 3 months to fill in the cue sheets for all that stuff. And they're not going to fill in cue sheets until after the show airs, because it can always change. So the cue sheets won't get to your PRO for, in this instance, like 15 months. And then if you're with ASCAP or BMI, it's going to be another 6 months before you actually get paid. So right away, we're really looking at, like 18 months before that shows up. If you are an international writer, you're not going to get your money for another year, probably past that, because that's how it works out. BMI sends the money to those PROs, and then they distribute it to you, however that works. But conversely, the other side is, like I was saying, once those shows get moving along and they're in reruns and stuff, that money is going to keep coming for a long time. So some of you already write a bunch of production music. And so, once you're in that system and you have money coming in on a regular basis, you don't mind so much that 1.5 year lag between when you wrote the music and when you're going to get paid for it. Like me personally, I've been doing it for like 25 years, and I've never had a year where I made less than the previous year, because those shows keep snowballing. There's shows that are in reruns from 10 years ago, and there are the new shows. I work on some shows that are, aired every day, which is nice. And, the money comes in. But if you're just kind of getting started with it, it is good to have another source of income. You're playing gigs, or you're teaching, or whatever the case is. What other?
Maybe submixes?
Oh yeah. So I'll tell you about how we like the music delivered, that whole system. If you write a cue, you're going to get the brief. You're going to say, oh, I want to work on this show. This is in my wheelhouse. I can crush this style or whatever. First of all, let me say, please do some research on the music that these shows use. You've got to watch the shows or watch shows that are similar. Look, I don't love reality TV shows myself, but I do watch them. I mean, it's more fun to watch when it's my music in there, but I really want to know what they are using and how they're using it and how it works. Are they using it for 45 seconds or are they using it for 12 seconds? Right? Is one particular style getting used more or longer? If you're writing a piece of music that's setting up a scene, is it getting used more or less than a type of music that's resolving a scene? Right? You need to really check that out. We will try to send references whenever we can. If a show is in a subsequent season, then you can watch the original, the first season. And if they're using that kind of music in the first season, that's what they're going to use in the third season, for sure. Now we have tools like in Logic, you can use the stem splitter. If you got a song, you can put the audio in Logic, and it'll split it out into stems. So you'll have just the vocals, just the drums, just the bass, and then whatever else. Well, if you record a TV show and then take that piece of audio and put it in Logic and use the stem splitter, it's going to take out the dialogue so you can hear the music, just the music. That's a really useful, tool, because a lot of times you can't really tell what's going on with music, because there's dialogue over the top, which brings up the point that all this music that you're writing is going to have dialogue over the top. That dialogue is at least as important as a vocal in a song. So you have to always leave room for dialogue. You can't write stuff that's too busy or complex. What was I saying, Ken? Right. So the process is you decide you're going to write cues for a show. You do your research, you find out what you're going to write. You write a cue. Send us an MP3 to the info@sickmuse.tv email. We will listen to it. We'll give you some comments back. Don't be offended by the comments. If we're continuing to work with you, we like what you do, but sometimes there's not time to be polite about how we comment. I might just say, the bass is too loud, or, this part falls out of the pocket, or, your sounds suck, or why don't you try this plugin, or whatever. And I like to, as I work with a composer, I like to not do too many revisions. Really, like one is probably good. At the beginning, as you get used to what we do and how we like things, there might be a few more revisions. But as a writer, I've worked with companies where they would literally ask for 17 revisions, at which point, all the life is gone out of your cue. So once we approve of your cue, okay, we'll say it's final. At that point, you can send us your full resolution mixes, which would be 48 kilohertz, 24-bit AIFF files. Of course, you will have a full mix, and there's a PDF that explains this pretty well. But you also need to do submixes, okay? That's like a no melody mix, a drums only, drums and bass. If you have acoustic guitars, a just acoustic guitar only mix can be great. If you have a nice ambience going on in your track, ambience only can be good. If you've got some cool percussion in your ambience, you do ambience percussion mix. Did I say drums and bass?
Yeah.
Drums and bass, used to get used a real lot. Not as much anymore. But, drums only, yeah, still. So you do as many submixes as you think an editor might want to use, right? Think like an editor always. They like to create their own dynamics by maybe starting with the full mix and then breaking it down to like the no melody mix and then back for your ending to the full mix. So to that end, all the mixes start at the exact same spot. They have to start at the exact same spot. And so that way the editor can take all the submixes, put them in his Avid, and he doesn't have to worry about crossfades or whatever. He can just cut, and use whatever he wants, and they should all line up fine.
Also, transition effects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you have any transition effects going on in the cue, like cymbal swells or swooshes or whatnot, of course, you want to mix without that because you don't really know where the transition is going to occur. But it's also real good to do a transition effects only submix. Give the guy whatever cool swells or swooshes that you made, and those can get used. That's the one submix that, if you want, doesn't need to start at the beginning. Might be useful to have that file start just where the swoosh is because they're going to cut it up and put it in wherever they need. That won't need to line up with the others. Also, we need stems. Stems don't get used very often, but it's important for us to have them because if somebody requests it, you might be off working on a film and don't have time to run the stems. So we do ask that you send the stems in a separate folder when you send it. You'll send all the mixes by WeTransfer. Don't do Google Drive or any of that other stuff. It just helps us stay organized to do just the WeTransfer. Bus stems or per instrument stems? Just bus stems, whatever is appropriate. It doesn't have to be extensive. Drums, basses, melody stuff, if it's not on top of each other, rhythm stuff. You can do short strings and long strings if you're used to that. I will say, as a reminder, we are not writing trailer music. There's that aesthetic for trailer music where it's got to, build and have a break and then build and have a break and then build some more. You really want to keep these pretty much at one dynamic. Like I said, you want to get your cue used for as long as possible. Whereas with a trailer cue, you don't care if they use it for 2 seconds, you're still going to get paid because those aren't, the business model is not for performance royalties, it's more for getting the sync license. So if you could just give them one thing that they like, you win. Yeah, we want to make this stuff as usable as possible. So yeah, like Kenton wrote in the chat, we do ask you guys to embed metadata into your cues before you send them to us, the final mixes. Just do the best you can. You don't have to be an English major to describe your cue, what's going on. You've just worked on it for however long. You should know what the style of it is and, give some words to describe it, basically. We recommend that you use some sort of program to embed the metadata. There's one called Kid 3 that is free. You can use that. If you have Disco, you can use that. You cannot use iTunes. Okay. iTunes does not stick unless you're opening it in iTunes. If you're sending music out to anybody in the world and you're using iTunes to put your name on the queue, 20% of the time, it's not going to be there. Yeah, it doesn't stick. It's only really made to work with iTunes. So you should have some dedicated application for your metadata, regardless whether you're working with us or anybody else. What else? Frequently asked.
Do we register?
Oh, yeah. If you're interested, the cues get registered by cue sheet. That's the most important thing. When the show uses the music and they file a cue sheet with the PRO, that's how the PRO knows to pay you. So those will be registered at that time. Sony ATV administers for the Discovery library. So when the albums get added to the Warner Brothers Discovery library, Sony ATV will then register those cues. Also, we register the cues when we release the albums on our own. Now, when you send us the cues, you're going to put a prefix on everything, JSB underscore. You don't have to write it down. We'll send you a PDF. But when we send them out to other entities other than Discovery, we're changing the prefix to SMM. So if you see a bunch of stuff registered in your ASCAP or BMI or whatever with a SMM underscore, that's the ones that we send out ourselves. So it's going to get registered by cue sheet. That's the important one. Down the road, Sony is going to register them and we're going to register them. But some guys like to keep track of what they've got going on by seeing what gets registered. That will take a while. So it's not going to happen right away.
Any other questions?
Do you guys have any other questions?
Hi, guys. Can you listen to me?
Yes. Can you introduce?
Okay. I'm Stefano. Is Stefano here?
Hi.
Thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity, and thanks for the explanation. It's not usual in the industry. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. Just a simple question. How much? How often do you send brief to us? There are many shows to write. That's great. There are about 10 shows. And
yeah,
so,
we'll send out a brief every time that we have a meeting with the Discovery guys, which is about, say, every 3 weeks. There's usually a few new shows, and then they'll tell us all the other shows that we've been working on, that it's still in production, or no, they've wrapped it up, or they've said that they've got enough music. So we'll say, here's the new shows, here's the other ones to keep working on, here's the ones to stop writing on. If you've been working on some cues and we say, oh, stop writing for that particular show, we will finish them up. We'll still send them over to the show, and of course add them to the library for other shows that may come along. Thing is that, like I said, all these shows use similar music. So if it fits for one show, it's probably going to fit for all the others. We have some shows that we work on that production company is working on a handful of shows at any given time in the same style. For example, there's, of course, there's the 90 Day Fiancé franchise on TLC. They've got a ton of shows that are all using sort of that pop music and sort of dramedy. And there's the Love and Marriage, Detroit Love and Marriage, DC. That production company does a bunch of shows for the Oprah Winfrey Network, and all the music is the same. So we send it out for all the shows that we're working on that it fits, but they're also going to keep all that music on their hard drive system and keep using it for all the shows that they work on. So like I said, it does tend to snowball. Did I answer your question, Stefano?
Yes, thank you.
Looks like you got some nice gear over there. I love it. Is there anybody else?
Hi, Jono.
Hello.
Hi. I did receive the PDFs, you guys, and I don't know if everybody got them, but I was gonna ask because I was just looking through the briefs, and I was just wondering because I had never heard of TLC Global. So is it like from cable TV or?
Yeah, that's cable TV. It's not TLC Global is not a particular network. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay.
That just means TLC and all its various international networks. TLC originally started out as the Learning Channel. Okay. Now it's just a bunch of reality shows. You know, it's my 900-pound life and Seeking Sister Wives and Little People and The Little Family and
Okay.
it's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, these shows, regardless the country that they are initially created for, do tend to end up all over the world. And sometimes it takes years. We like literally like 3 years ago during pandemic times, we were working on a show called Coming from America. It's about some families that moved from the US back to Africa. And so we did a bunch of African music. It was really fun. And then we never heard anything for 3 years or more. It just started airing on Max.
Wow.
It's kind of funny to watch because, you know, the people have masks on and stuff, like because it was filmed during the pandemic. But yeah, they do seem to at some point they all have a life somewhere.
I mean, I was just curious mainly because I wanted to like watch some of this stuff. So it's just like, okay, where can I watch?
Right. If you have Max, you know, HBO Max, that shows all the stuff, but you can also get Discovery Plus, which shows all the Discovery networks on it. Or you can sometimes find some episodes on YouTube or kind of wherever.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure. I lost my train of thought. Any other questions? Anything I should say?
I just had a question in the chat about NDAs.
Yeah.
Let's see. If we share our work or process on social media, is there an NDA around sharing what we're working on?
There's not.
Don't advertise it, I guess.
You can talk about it. I know, you know, like I said, when we find out that, a composer has had some music used in a particular show, everybody wants to say, you know, tell their friends, right? And that's fine. You can do that.
Watch.
We're not going to share anything that we're not allowed to share.
Right.
For example, sometimes we'll get video of a new show and they'll say this is confidential. So I can't send that to you. If you want to come over here and watch it, sure, we can do that. But we can't, we can't send it out because we said we wouldn't. Yeah, there's, you should read the contract. It's written in plain English. I don't think it says anything about non-disclosure. There's like non-compete, but that's common sense and common courtesy. You're not going to go like, oh, we're working on this show. You're not going to go to some other publisher and say, hey, Sick Muse is working on this show. Can you get some music in there? There'd be no point because we're putting in anything you can. I will say about references, speaking of common sense and common courtesy, if we send you references, we don't want knockoffs of those cues. We're sending it because so you can hear the style of music, the tempo, the instrumentation, the statistical density of the music, how busy is it, or how simple. It's a pretty small community, and sometimes the music is our music. Sometimes it's from another company that we're probably friends with. So it's just poor form to knock off other guys. And the show is not looking for an exact duplicate, right? I like to say, take 3 of the references. Maybe you take the groove from one, and maybe you are influenced by the harmony of another one, and maybe the something like the riff of a third one. So now you're at the end of the day, you're not writing anything that's even recognizable as what you were referencing. Does that make sense? Yes. Any other questions that you guys have, you can send us a note, and we always try to answer stuff. We try to review the cues as soon as possible, because I know that a writer is working on that in that moment and might have some other stuff to do later. We want to get the stuff turned around as fast as possible, so we're gonna give you our comments as soon as we can. What's this? Michael says, couple friends work with Warner Brothers. Hogwarts license, much less restrictive, which is great. Yeah. The shows don't want, obviously, to be talking about it, a show that's just in production, that's never been on the air. But at some point, it's going to be good publicity for them to have people talking about it. So I guess that's about it. I'm looking forward to hearing some great music from you guys. And if you've written a bunch of reality show music in the past, great. You should be able to jump off real quick. If you haven't, then we're going to try to bring you along and get you up and running on writing that style. So cool. I guess we'll let you go, and we'll talk to y'all soon.